Welcome back to another edition of Things That Matter. And Things That Matter, we always use a word to start each week. Well, this week it's going to be coaching. That's exactly right. A lot of you may not know it, but Charlie Giroux, in addition to all the other things he's doing, he's running for governor right now, in case you missed it. I'm Gary Sutton. Charlie has coached basketball. He's played soccer. He's played basketball. He's a big fan. But he was a coach at one point in time. And tell people a little bit about your coaching experience.
Well, my best coaching experience was right next to this guy. We coached some AAU women who really were superior athletes, most of them be Division I or Division II basketball players. And that was a real joy. I had never coached women before, so it took a little bit of getting used to. But as you know, we ended up having a really good season, thanks to the big coach here. But I did coach high school basketball for a number of years at my alma mater, Philmont Christian, down in the southeast corner of the state. We had some great teams. And interestingly, a couple of the guys that I coached are now helping on the campaign. And a couple of the guys that I coached have gone on to be really successful coaches themselves.
Let's talk a little bit about coaching. We're in March Madness now, by the way. So right in the middle of basketball, getting all ready for the college teams to play everywhere. And it's just a great time of year. But coaching is something you do also, I think, as a governor.
Absolutely.
You want to make sure that you play to strengths and away from weaknesses. That's one of the things we'll start on right here. As you think about putting together a group to run a campaign, as you think about putting together an administration as a governor, those things certainly have to come into mind, much as they do when you're coaching on the bench.
It really does, Gary. And one of the things that really controls my thoughts about leadership is getting myself under control. In the world of politics, there are a lot of giant egos, and mine is no smaller than anybody else's. But I pray every morning, and I mean this sincerely, for humility, because if you can keep your big ego under control, and if you can keep it within the confines of understanding that other people have big egos too, you're going to do a whole lot better, because then you're going to be able to bring in the best people, the brightest and the best, people that are better at what they do than you are. And it's the old Jim Collins model. You get the very best people, you get them on the bus, you get them in the right seats, you lay out a plan for them, and then you kind of step back and let the plan be executed. I know that when we coached, we both kind of said the same thing. We laid out a game plan for the game, but then we said to our players, do the work. The coach can't go out and do it on the court. The coach has got to say, we're prepared, we have the skills, we have the personnel, we have the plan, now execute.
I have a friend who approached coaching and he said it's the double A's. He said it's attack and adjust. Attack with what you know, adjust to what you don't. Obviously, as a governor, you come in, you're attacking with what you know. In a perfect world, maybe all that works, but it's adjusting to what you don't know about that really is the point. And I think a lot of people today are a little uneasy about the way people adjust to things, that they have a tough time leaving an agenda. We talked about that in the last Things That Matter. But leaving an agenda and going to what the reality is and adjusting that, I think, is really the mark of a true leader, a true coach.
Yeah, and I mean, the failures of the Wolf administration point that up in a couple of very, very specific areas. One, Tom Wolf could never adjust to the fact that he wasn't going to get the giant tax increases that he wanted to foist upon the people of Pennsylvania. He wasn't going to get an additional tax on natural gas. But yet he kept going after it. He was like a dog with a bone. He just constantly wanted to tax people more. And the other thing where I think he really fell down with not being able to adjust was in the pandemic. He wanted this mandate and edict approach, which didn't work on a whole lot of levels, but he couldn't adjust. Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem, and others showed us a better way, but Tom Wolf, it took him forever to get to the point where he could even adjust marginally, and that is a big failure. So you're right, it's an attack, but always the adjustments. That's the reason they have halftime. You can go into the locker room and say, look, either this is working, we're just going to keep going with it, or we've got to make some adjustments, we've got to make some changes. And then when you do, you generally come out on top.
The other part of it, too, and I always believed in this, in teaching kids how to be free with responsibility and play within a certain system, that you had to learn how to trust them. And once you were able to trust kids to do the right thing, you had something really special there. Our democracy, our representative democracy is set up in such a way that we're supposed to be trusting the people, and yet a lot of people feel right now with regulations being pushed around a little bit that they're not trusted to use liberty and freedom the right way. You and I both believe that we do a pretty good job with that. People who kind of form their own little autocracy don't. Talk about that from a coaching standpoint.
Well, trusting the people is really what it's all about, Gary.
Right.
I mean, our entire system, our whole republic is built around the people rule. And trusting the people is at the very, very heart of that. So when you don't trust the people, you're already off the path that we ought to be on.
One of the things that I think in coaching that is so important is the idea of playing to strengths and away from weaknesses. You were talking a moment ago about weaknesses and strengths and ego and all those things getting in the way. And I think all of us as coaches find that to be the case sometimes. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do you play to your strengths and away from weaknesses? And when you form a group around you, how do you learn? I think we learn that everybody has great strengths and some people don't have strengths in other areas. How do you put that all together? You've been doing that for a lot of years with an organization here at Quantum.
My strengths are the big picture items, Gary. To be able to see from 30,000 feet what the problems are and to say, here's the direction that we need to go.
Right.
To create a corporate culture, if you will, that will get us there. And then to bring in the very best people to get the job done. I'm not the best day-to-day administrator. I mean, here at Quantum Communications, we had office managers that did that kind of stuff for me and did it under my supervision, but did it much better than I would have done it myself. And that, I think, is really at the core of it all, is to know thyself. You know, a man's got to know his limitations,
right,
as Clint Eastwood once said. And I think I know my limitations, but I also understand my strengths, and I think that's what makes a really good leader.
Who are some of the best coaches that you've seen over the years, and maybe some of the lessons you've taken away from them as you've looked out there and watched all the basketball that you've watched? There have been a lot of good ones around.
Well, my favorite coach, obviously, is Jay Wright, who has had not only an amazing record of wins and losses and national championships at a relatively small school, but more important, has formed and fashioned really, really, really exemplary young men who graduate with a degree in their hands, go on to great things in life after their basketball careers are done, and personify all of the values that Jay Wright tried to teach, or did teach, every day. But you've got some other great coaches. I mean, Dean Smith was one that everybody, I think, looked to as somebody who understood the game. Bobby Knight, you know, you may not have liked all of his personality aspects, but he certainly knew the game, and he knew how to mold young men, because for all the negative stuff that was said about Bobby Knight, some of it justified, we know, player after player came back and said, you know, Bobby Knight was my hero. He lifted me out of this. He helped me along the way. I mean, you listen to Isaiah Thomas, for example, and some of these guys talk about Coach Knight in almost reverential ways, and you realize it. I got to throw in your buddy Krzyzewski,
right,
who, you know, not only had a great career, and who up until relatively recently got young men through a, you know, really high-class academic institution, right, with degrees in their hand. I don't like the one-and-done stuff that's coming in, not only at Duke, but a lot of other places.
Sure.
Now. I think it's really hurt the game of basketball. I still like Jim Boeheim.
Right.
Didn't used to like him. He grew on me. And, you know, part of it was the Big East. Loved the Big East. And when Syracuse was part of the Big East family, I think that the Big East was a better place. But Boeheim's one I like. You know, I can't talk about coaches without talking about John Wooden,
right,
who was legendary.
UCLA.
Passed on, obviously, at this point. But his pyramid of success is something that everybody should look at, because he focused more on that pyramid of success than on the X's and O's and fundamentals of the game on the court.
One of the things he said was success was knowing that what you think about is what you'll become eventually. I paraphrase that a little bit. But if you think about things, you'll become that because you're going to work on that all the time. As governor, what are the things that you would work on right now to be successful in the long run?
Well, I think in the long run, Gary, the thing that we have to focus on is re-strengthening and rebuilding our economy. We have so many opportunities here, but we have to be a job creation attractor. We have to make Pennsylvania a better place in which to create jobs and opportunities and a strong economy. We've been failing in that, Gary, for a number of years, you know, and we've got to get to a path where people really want to stay here and come here. But we've got to get election integrity. That's not something that I hope will last for a long, long time. But as I've said, election integrity is about all of us. So if we're vigilant, if we're watching, if we're doing our jobs, if we're taking the responsibility of being local judges of elections or inspectors or that kind of thing. It really, really helps with election integrity. It's not all lawsuits and that kind of stuff after elections. It's while the process is going on, being very, very vigilant. So those are a couple of things. But education is clearly a leader into our economy. We've got to provide every child in Pennsylvania with what he or she is guaranteed in our Constitution, and that is a thorough and efficient education.
You talked about Coach Krzyzewski a moment ago in his last year at Duke, obviously in March Madness now, and just coming off having coached the regular season championship. But one of the things in going to his clinics over the years, I got to know about him, he's a very good people person. And I would dare say that just about every great coach, which I would put him in that classification, understands people. And I think as coaches, we have to understand that you can't communicate with everybody the same way. You might have the same set of information, you have the same rules and so forth, but communicating is a big part of things. You've been in the communications business for a long time as a coach and also as a head of Quantum Communications. Talk about the chief things you'd want to do right now in communicating things to the people of Pennsylvania so they know that you have ownership of them, but so do they.
All good communication, Gary, begins with listening, because God gave us two of these and one of these for a reason. And so listening to the people of Pennsylvania is something I've been doing for every day since I decided to run for governor. And I'll continue to do that. And I really make it an effort to reach out and try to hear the voices of people on a variety of different subjects. Different people want to talk about different things. But I think you get a flavor of where the Commonwealth is and where people are going, from places as distinct and different as Philadelphia and Erie, or the small towns that were found or are found in between. So I think that listening is at the beginning of good communication. But then it's just looking people in the eye and talking straight with them. And that's what I will do as governor. We're going to get rid of the BS that has been all too often prevalent in Pennsylvania's communications and conversations. We're going to get back to real talk about real issues and things that really matter.
And things that do matter. You know, one of the things that I've found as a coach over the years is you have to tell your kids the truth. The people that you work with, whether they are kids in a basketball team or people in a state, you have to tell the truth. People are a lot smarter than we give them credit for, and it's the respect that you give to those people and the truth that you tell them, I think that really earns the respect for you in a time where we really need that right now. Talk about that.
And here's what I find, Gary. When you tell people the truth, you're telling them something they already knew. They knew the truth. They wanted to see whether you would tell them the truth. And so that's a great divider for too many in the political world. People waiting for somebody to tell them what they already know to be true in ways that will allow them to better understand it perhaps, but be affirmed in the fact that they know what's going on.
And, you know, from the standpoint of direction for the state, you as a potential governor, somebody once said, if you don't know where you're going, any road you take will get you there.
Exactly.
Some of us feel that way right now in terms of where our government is going, both nationally and statewide. If we don't know where we're going, any road we take will get you there. What road are you going to take?
We're going to take the path of prosperity, Gary. We're going to look for opportunities to expand individual liberty, to promote personal freedom, and to give Pennsylvanians more opportunities to do better for themselves and their families and our collective future. That's the path we're going to take.
You can check out coaching. You can check out a lot of the other videos we have at charlieforgovernor.com. You can also do one other thing. You can give a call. Tell them about it.
My number, personal cell number, is 717-877-8194. 717-877-8194. I'd be glad to talk about anything you'd like to chat about. I'll even give you my picks for March Madness.
There you go. You can talk to the coach, the candidate, Charlie Giroux. 877-8194. Don't forget that's a 717 area code. For things that matter, and for Charlie Giroux, I'm Gary Sutton.
Businessman, conservative, patriot, Charlie Giroux for governor.